For this demonstration, we're going to lay out a set of 6 thumbnails. So there's going to be 3 thumbnails at the top with a 1/2 inch space in between them and 3 thumbnails at the bottom. For step 1, you're going to create a border. But this time you're going to create a 2.5 inch border at the top and the bottom and a 1.25 inch border along the sides. Okay, so before we get started with measuring our border for our thumbnails, let's look at how to read a ruler. Okay, so with the metal ruler, which is what I would prefer you guys to have, we already established that the beginning of the 1 inch stitch mark does not start at the edge of the ruler. It starts about 1/8 of an inch in. So this little space right here is non-space. Whenever you're measuring, you want to start off with this stitch mark right there. That's where the 1 inch starts. Okay. And then you see a bunch of stitch marks in the 1st inch, and there aren't as many in the 2nd inch. It's because the 1st inch is split up into 1/32. So each one of these tiny stitch marks is called 1/32. Okay. It's easier to deconstruct the inch when we're looking at the next inch over that doesn't have as many lines. Okay, so you have this space right here is called 1/16 of an inch. Okay, so you have 1/16 plus 1/16 is going to equal 1/8. So this distance here is called 1/8. When you have 1/8 plus 1/8, that equals 1/4. Okay, so this distance here is going to be 1/4. When you add 1/4 plus 1/4, you get a 1/2. Okay, so this is the 1/2 inch right here. And then when you add 1/2 plus 1/2, you get a whole. So this is the full inch here. So let's go back and read that again. I'm going to read it with quarters. Okay, so this is 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. Okay, 1/4 plus 1/4 equals a 1/2. A 1/2 plus 1/4 equals 3/4. Okay, 3/4 plus 1/4 is 4/4. 4/4 equals 1 whole. Okay, so yes, we are talking using the language of math, but it's just it's also how you talk about reading the gauge of a ruler. Okay, so again, all you have to do is think about this as 1 whole inch, right? From the large stitch marks to the next large stitch mark is 1 whole inch. And then 1/2 of that is right here. So that's the 1/2 inch marker. 1/2 of that is 1/4. 1/2 of that is 1/8. 1/2 of that is 1/16. So when I say I want you to measure 1 1/4, that means I want you to measure 1 plus 1/4 here. Okay. So this distance right here is 1 1/4. Okay. So let's apply that 1 1/4 inch measurement to the creation of our border. Remember, we're going to make a border that separates the outer picture plane with the drawing space, okay? And the border's dimensions are going to be 2.5 inches on the top and the bottom, and 1 1/4 inches on the sides. Okay. So you're going to line your ruler up, and I will put the camera up close again so that you can see me measuring. Okay, so I'm going to measure 1 1/4 in from the edge at the bottom. Okay. And at the top of the paper, I'm going to measure in 1¼ inches. Okay. And then I'm going to connect those two lines. And I'm going to do the same thing over here on the right edge. Okay. So again, I'm going to pull the camera up close. And this time I'm placing the ruler at the 1¼ inch marker, right, on the edge of the paper, and I'm going to mark off this first inch. Okay, so you have 1¼ I'll do the same thing at the bottom of the pad. Measure 1¼ in from the edge. And then I'll connect those two lines, those two stitch markers with a line. Okay. So what we have so far are the left and the right edges of the border drawn, and those are each 1/4 inch wide. Now we're going to draw the top border and the bottom border. So those are 2½ inches from the top and 2½ inches from the bottom. So now you've got your drawing space, right, and your border. I'm going to erase the excess. And then the next step is to divide the drawing space, which is within the border, into 6 thumbnails. Okay, so each thumbnail is going to be 3½ inches wide by 2 3/4 high, and each thumbnail is going to have a 1/2 inch space between them. Okay. So first I'm going to measure the width of each thumbnail going across the top. So I said they're going to be 3½ inches wide. So let's measure out 3½ inches here. Okay. And then there's going to be a 1/2 inch space between them. So this is a 1/2 inch space. Okay. And then there's going to be 1, 2, 3½ inches is the width of the next thumbnail with a 1/2 inch space between. The leftover distance is 3½. Okay. We'll do the same thing at the bottom. 3½ with a 1/2 inch space. 3½ with a 1/2 inch space, and there's 3½ inches left over. So I'm going to connect those stitch markers. And then I'm going to erase the line where the space is going to be. Okay. So now I want to split each of these up into two, and they're going to be 2 3/4 inch high with a 1/2 inch space between 2 3/4 inch high. So I'm going to measure over one inch, 2 inch plus 1 2 3/4. And then 2/4 equals a 1/2 inch space. So the leftover space up here should equal to 2 3/4. Let's measure it. 1 2 1 2 3/4. Okay. So you'll do the same thing over here. And I like to put just a little scribble in the space so I know what the space is. And we'll measure over 1 2 3/4 with a 1/2 inch space between. Should be 2 3/4 left over. Okay. So now we'll connect those two sets of stitch marks. And I'm not going to draw the line in the space between because I already know that that's going to be a blank space. Okay. And then I'll erase the lines that I know are going to be spaces. Okay. Okay. So this is your grid of thumbnails, and each thumbnail is 3.5 inches by 2 3/4 inches. Okay, with a 1/2 inch space in between.